This morning I'm doing some weeding and some observation and thinking, and I thought it'd be nice to share a video around the subject of high density, high diversity, high resiliency, and what it can look like to design a small but very productive, very resilient space that can be profitable if that's a direction you'd want to take. So stick with us. Sasha and I make our living mainly by selling perennial, super hardy food and medicine bearing plants. A lot of you folks that watch this channel have supported us by investing in yourselves and in us to get some of these plants. I hope they're all growing beautifully for you. And we've got gardens all over the place that share this common theme of, from a zoomed out look, you could imagine just this pure riot of chaos. There's just plants all over the place. They're packed on each other. There's weeds, air quote, so to speak, in all the directions. And how could you possibly make a living selling plants from a system like this? If you're a nursery, don't you have rows of this and rows of that and, you know, all sorts of drip irrigation and the normal things you expect? Well, if you're a permaculture nursery, I think you can get away with, or you can very intentionally design systems that look like this, that are very functional. I want to zoom in now and actually look at some of these plants. If I were to look just at this one bed, which is roughly 4 feet wide by around 16 or so feet long, there are at least 30 different species of plants in here. It's a mix between plants that we explicitly have sown out or are intentionally propagating for nursery. There is a mix of annuals that we've intentionally sown or just allowed to come in. So for example, here is purple auric that Sasha harvests almost every day for us for breakfast. It's getting about 8 feet tall. It's a member of the spinach family. We didn't sow it, but we've grown it in the past and it decided to show up this year and it's very happy, so we're leaving it. And you could say, well, this is a production bed for your nursery. That's a lot of space taken up by just an annual that you didn't even intend. But it's fine, and until it gets in the way, it's a lovely plant to be here. It's casting a little shade on some of the more very intentional aspects of this bed. You can see on the northern end here are all thornless honey locust. These are plants that we are growing out from seed with the intent of selling either this fall or next spring as small first-year seedlings, and they've been intentionally put on the north side of the bed so that if we don't get around to digging them up this fall, they can continue to grow, get 2 to 3, maybe even 3 or 4 feet tall next year, and cast a little bit of shade to the bed to the north. Kind of helps from the outset to design in the relative location of these trees to have some time to grow. The center of the bed is loaded to the gills with sea kale root fragments that are rooting out. I've talked about how we do that in other videos. I'll link here to that. And we've intentionally put those root fragments through the center of the bed because those leaves get quite large. And in fact, we may very well, as they develop their roots and become viable plants for sale, use some of the leaves as a mulch, as a soil builder, as a protector for other small plants on their way to becoming viable nursery stock. And in the center of the bed, they have room to spread their leaves and not be too problematic for the edges. Then randomly another weed, so to speak, a dill, shows up. Very happy to have them here. We're going to be making pickles this summer. It's nice and tall, it's casting light shade, so why not just allow it to be? All through this bed, as the sea kale has been developing for the season, we've been orchestrating gently the plants that are showing up. I think I'll shed the word weeds. You get the idea for the rest of this video. But here's Tulsi. We grew this on the edge of the bed last year. It's a lovely medicinal basil. We can harvest it as it gets in the way, or not. Maybe it doesn't even get in the way. We allow it to grow with the sea kale. Blue hyssop showed up. It's another nursery plant, so when we go to dig these sea kale in the fall, we'll have some extra bonus stock to work with. Then I'm seeing purslane growing all throughout here. We adore purslane. It cooks up beautifully with eggs in the morning, so we're focusing our energy. First we weeded out, we pulled and harvested the purslane that volunteered through the young honey locust, and now the honey locust has closed canopy and we no longer need to harvest the purslane from underneath them, and so we're focusing our energy on harvesting and enjoying the bounty of purslane as a very active ground cover amongst our perennial leek seedlings, but they're not competing with them right now, and as we get into the dryness of early August, we may very well leave the purslane to expand and protect the soil a bit more. These perennial kales have leafed out and closed canopy enough that the purslane has more or less disappeared underneath, so we'll wait for the purslane to re-arrive next season. And to the north of the perennial kales are mother plants of Good King Henry, which have provided us amazing perennial greens early in the season, and as they slowly but surely continually make ripe seed heads, we did our first collection of seed very intentionally back in June, and now as these seed heads ripen, we look for gaps in the garden space and we simply sow them in. And by doing so, you can see that pattern has played out, that now we've got hundreds and hundreds of new Good King Henry. And so for next year, we'll be able to offer this high value, rare, hard to find perennial green simply by facilitating it dropping its seeds a little further from the mother plants so we can dig them out. That's just a few square feet of this one little garden. Not to add a crude layer to it, but there is the reality for most of us in this day and age that we need to earn a living in order to be. And so coming back full circle to the idea that Sasha and I make our living from this nursery work, I think it's worth noting the value financially of these plants, and that it is wholly compatible to make gentle, ethical, iterative decisions about how you're working with plants and allowing them to be more in the natural, wild, interconnected state that they wish to be, and having it still remain profitable. So, for example, each of these sea kale plants that are growing in here are worth about $12. They have roots attached to them that can be divided off that are worth about $2 a piece. This section of this bed may very well be worth around $300 or $400. The honey locust to the north of them, when they come to fruition as seedling first-year plants, may be worth around $500, maybe $1,000 if we leave them till next year. The Good King Henry, if we choose to monetize them, we may very well choose to simply transplant them out throughout the landscape. But our design is generally to over-yield for ourselves first, grow more plants than we know what to do with as far as eating and enjoying, then set them out in wild spaces to see how they cope in the wild, and then start to sell them when we have even more than that. So we may not sell these next year, but if we do, that's a few $100s if we choose to do that. It's not the lens we predominantly look through when we're working in here, but for folks that are thinking, I really would like to make more of my livelihood by being able to be in the garden. I mean, this is my office, this is my warehouse, and this is compatible with us earning our living. And it can look like this. To your eye, you may find this beautiful. You may also find this incredibly chaotic and hard to deal with. You don't have to let things be feral in order for them to be permaculture, so to speak. But allowing beings to be wild and next to each other, it's what they seem to thrive with. So we like to fall into that and work with it. Zooming back out from that first garden space that I focused most of this video on, you can see that the context of the overarching picture of our half-acre little home that Sasha and I occupy near Cornell on a busy road on a north-facing slope at 1,200-foot elevation with way too much water generally, it is compatible so long as there's high density, diversity, and interrelationship of these plant beings. And that pattern continues on over and over and over again. There are areas where it's challenging and we hit some serious roadblocks, and I'd like to make a more thorough video. Been holding out on doing a grand tour of our 0.1 acre main garden because this year it's been so wet early in the spring that a lot of our attempts have drowned, but there's still a lot of things working. And if you cast a wide enough net and you give enough space for nature to show you what it's trying to do, you'd be surprised that even with 60%, 80% failure rates on some of your experiments, that your gardens may very well still be filled at the end of the season with plants that are valuable and beautiful and really lovely to be around. So it's just a snapshot in time and place, midsummer, at one of our probably 50 plus miscellaneous insane gardens that serve a lot of layers of function that we're designing as they design themselves. Hopefully this is some food for thought, and hopefully a few of you may find that there's a path out there that growing resilient, beautiful, hardy plants for yourselves, for your neighbors, for your community can end up actually being something that's profitable enough that you may be able to leave jobs or paths that aren't as rewarding for you. I hope that for you. Share some comments. Let me know what you think, what's been working for you, and let's keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching.